So let's come back to this image. So I wanted to show you so this is a copy of this image, and I'm going to zoom in and show you. You guys can sort of like see kind of what's going on here. Does that look like real skin to you? Yes, it's real skin. It's flawless skin, right? Take a look at this. That's all done tonally. Every bit of that. So I'm going to go in here and show you what this actually looks like. This is the thing that throws everybody. I'm going to zoom out. This is her tonal retouching. It's insane, right? Absolutely insane. But this is what it actually takes to do this kind of work. So I'm going to show you what this looks like again, just so that you remember. So not one single thing on here, on this layer that I'm turning on and off. There's not the first healing brush in that. There is not the first clone stamp tool in that. There is not the first piece of texture of skin that has been compromised because it got somehow sandwiched, that we took a new texture and laid part of it on top of an old texture and then essentially mushed the two together on the edges. That is all done tonally. But there's another thing that you need to realize here too, and we should talk about this as well. Why do actors and anybody who wears makeup, what's foundation all about?
Changing your skin to be similar, like all around.
It's exactly what it is. So it's not really designed to make your skin tone different. It's not designed to make me darker or lighter. What it's designed to do is take the blotchiness that is in my face, that's inherent in all skin, and make it one consistent color. It has a way of feeling like everything gets smoothed out if you do that. You do that also with a tonal layer as well, and I'm going to show you what that looks like right here. So this is why I say we've got tonal retouching small and we've got tonal retouching large. So to do this more larger scale work, you would want to make a separate, did I start recording on this? Yeah. You want to do a separate layer, and the reason you want to do this, I'm going to show you what the layer does. I'm going to turn it on and off, and you can see it's doing. If we turn this off, you can see that there's an area right here of a darkening of her skin. Another area that's happening down here. There's not that she has a mustache, but it is that sort of mustache line that goes around that's also a little bit darker, as is some of this area underneath her her mouth right here. There's also the circles under her eyes. Again, this isn't the kind of thing that you want to completely remove, because if you completely remove it, then she doesn't have, there's no dimension in her face. There's no eyeballs in her face. They're flat. So, but you want to soften this up. So again, I'm going to show you again on and off what this actually looks like. And you can see the impact that this has actually had. It makes her skin look significantly smoother. And it is doing it exactly the same way foundation would actually do it. I'm going to show you what the layer looks like. And you can see they're much broader. They're much, much, much larger. It's a much, much larger brush that's being used here. It's also even less opacity. When you start to do this kind of work in here, you're usually in that 2 to 3% range instead of that 6 or 7% range where we're doing that really detailed work. Because the thing with this is that when you do it, it needs much less correction than the rest. And so if you use those high opacities, it takes, not that you can't recover, again, just go in and paint this. You could actually, you can circle it and fill it with 50% gray, or you can go back and you can actually create a 50% gray as your foreground color and go in here and paint with a paintbrush on it to remove all this. Katie?
How do you know, like, when to stop?
When's enough is too much, or when to quit? So one of the things that you should realize about this is the way that I typically look at this stuff and do this stuff, is that I'll show you. So in this case like here, if I felt like I was looking at this and I felt like I'd taken this too far. So let's say that somebody, you know, our director is looking at it and saying, you know, Versa, I think you pulled a little too much of the color out from under her eyes, a little too much of that tone. Can you bring some back in? I don't want to erase this layer and go in and do that all again. So I simply add a layer mask to it. You can still work with these with a layer mask. So I can put a layer mask on this guy. So I'm going to simply click on this, add a layer mask, grab the B key, which is a brush, make it a much larger brush. In this case, I am going to leave my opacity up, but I'm going to drop my flow down to like a 6%, something down like that. Black is going to be my foreground color, and then I'm just working in this area right in here, and I'm just going to come back and forth to actually start to bring tone in there. And you can see this is what it looks like. That's what I just added to that mask, and this is the difference that it made. So once you've done all the tonal work, use masks to control it. You don't want to go in there and redo it. Does that goes down to the central issue? Separate layers. So this, if you got no other takeaway from this, please take this one away today, is this. If you have actually gone in and done all of this, do you want to fuck that up by doing this on top of it and realizing that this work you took too far? So instead of just undoing this or throwing a mask on this, you've got to redo all of that. You got to start over. So you want this to stay only as this work like this. Now she's actually see on it, sometimes you'll get mistakes like this. She really put a little bit of her eye lightening on this, and she did a little teeth lightening in here. I would actually have that on my larger layer as well. But for the most part, she kept it pretty separate. But I got to confess to you guys, when I'm doing this work, all of a sudden I realize I'm working on the wrong one of these layers, and I'll quit and go to the correct one. They both do the same thing. It's just you don't want to mix this work up, because if you screw up the big tonal stuff, it's on the very same layer as this small stuff, it means you got to do all the small stuff all over again. Yes?
What would be the big tonal stuff, like those dark spots we were talking about?
Again, it's all these areas right here. So it's basically what's going on here. Okay. So what people will do also, it doesn't just have to end there, and I'm showing it to you. People will do contouring using this very same trick again. So the very same thing that's going on here. So again, in contouring, what would happen, now I don't suggest really doing contouring, doing this, and the reason I don't suggest doing it is there's faster ways to do contouring where it should go for you. But basically what contouring would be is in order to, so all the work that we're doing right here is trying to smooth skin out by removing shadows and highlights. Do not go under the mistake that what I'm asking you to do is take the highlight that's coming down the bridge of her nose and get rid of that. You don't want that to happen, because if you remove this highlight on the bridge of her nose will simply collapse into her face. It'll be flat. It won't come out to you at all. So I've had people do this before. They feel like they need to take this down and then open up the shadows on the side. Well, that completely defeats it. Then her nose just got pressed into her face. So I used to work, I used to work for, she's probably dead by now, so I can go ahead and say this, right? Say it. Used to work, she was the, she was not called the photo editor. She was like whatever, she was like a Playboy magazine, and she was the sweetest. Well, she wasn't really sweet. She was a really intense woman. She had a really good eye. She really knew what she was doing, but she was like a take no prisoner, balls to the wall kind of girl. And she was just like, you know, you just didn't fuck with Madeline or she would make your life horrible, right? And so at some point, like in her mid-30s, I want to say, mid-30s, late 30s, something like that, she decided she needed to have a nose job. And she just wanted a little, her nose was fine, but she just wanted a little, you know, just, I don't know, a little something, right? 17 nose jobs later, she had no nose. She had 2 holes that just went straight into her face. And so when you looked at her, you were looking up her nose. There was no way not to do it. So anyway, I'm not a big plastic surgery kind of fan. That's just me. I have no idea what took me down that road, but at any rate. Yeah. Oh, noses and nose being flat on your face. That's exactly what took me there. Okay, I'm not completely insane yet. Okay, are there questions about this part? Does that make sense of what's going on here, what we're talking about here? Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this. I just want you guys to realize that that's kind of what's involved with this. So this is my suggestion to you. I drink when I do this. No, it helps. It helps because you don't stay so, you get a little messy. And the little messy part keeps things a little bit more organic. You're not so like, because I've seen people do this. They sit there at this one point and they just hammer back and forth and all of a sudden that point just like sticks out and it's like, oh, well, that's ridiculous. You know, you need to be moving around. You need to be fluid. You need to be loose. You need to be, so good music. Don't get too fucked up because then you just because then your judgment's off and you're like, you don't know, you're like, oh God, it looked so good last night. It looks awful this morning. You know, that happens. Take breaks from it because you will, I promise you this, you'll go blind to this stuff. All of a sudden it's like, okay, you'll really have a lot of issue trying to see because your eyes are just being saturated with. At a certain point, you start to go a little crazy. We'll admit that, Katie. I'm going to show you a couple tricks about this. Yes, I do. So for me, I will retouch for an hour or two, then I'll walk away from it if I have time. If I need to, I'll come back to it that night. I try to get a night in between. Like, again, going to sleep and getting up in the morning can change everything. It'll actually just help you, help that whole part out. So again, those are the only tricks that I can actually sort of like throw on that. But I am going to show you another couple of tricks about this, and then we'll see where we go. We actually have to, okay, we're going to do a couple other things. So I'm going to go back to my image right now. So this is what I've actually been working on right here. I'm going to turn on, so I've got my pixel retouching layer here. I've got my virgin at the bottom. My pixel retouching layers here. I've got my tonal work on the top. Again, I'm going to zip out here. So I need everybody to back up. I'm going to show you what I mean by doing like the big tonal large retouching layer here. So we're going to go ahead and make another retouching layer. Make sure that the original one is active at the top because I'm going to add another layer and I want it to go on the top. So again, hold down the Option key and click on the Add Layer and it brings up the dialog box and we'll call this Tonal Retouching Large, T-O-N-A-L. And again, change the blending mode of this to soft light. And click on that checkbox to fill this soft light with a neutral gray. And the reason that we do neutral gray, filling the neutral gray, I'm going to hold down my Option key just so you can spot this stuff. This will still work on a completely transparent layer, but you can't see it. These tones right in here are so incredibly light, you'll never spot that on a transparent layer. So you don't know where to go in to fix something. Whereas if you do it on this gray layer right here, this stuff becomes extremely easy to spot. So that's why we do it on these layers like this. We use the same dodging and burning colors on this large layer as we do on the small one. So again, I just need to make sure I'm on the large layer and it's actually active. I'm going to actually go over this area that's right in here. You can see that there's a small little dark line right here. Some people would say that's contouring for her cheek. I don't really believe it is. I don't think that's what's going on in here. If it was contouring in her cheek, it would probably continue to go down more. So I'm thinking it's just, again, it's the inherent discoloration that skin has. So I'm going to go after this part right here in my large layer. So again, I've got the B key for a brush. It is a normal blending mode on this brush. It is a completely brush. I'm going to say OK to that. I'm going to actually put my flow all the way back up to 100% and opacity all the way down. And I'm going to go to like a 2 or I'm going to do like a 3% down here. About this size down here, and then again I start double clicking really fast and I realize that I'm doing my burning color in there. You can see it right here. If you hold down the Option key and click on the eyeball, you can see it's that spot right there. That's also showing me that this brush is completely hard, so that is a problem, although it's not. Because it shouldn't have anywhere near that edge to it, but it does. Anyway, lasso key to select this. Come up in Edit menu down to Fill. Fill that with 50% gray and say OK. Command D to deselect and we'll go back to it. So in this area, change to my dodging color here, X key, and then again, be up here and start to work on this part right here. power to sort of like take that part back. Does this make sense to you guys?
Should we be alternating colors with this one or this color?
I'm sorry, what?
Should we be like alternating colors between burn and dodge?
Oh yeah, again, you're going back and forth. So yeah, this takes both of them. So, but again, one thing to consider here is you need to kill all the highlight and shadow that's on these little bitty bumps here. But this overall highlight, you don't want to kill this thing because that's actually the lighting explains this. This needs to still be there. So if you take a look at the other image that I just was showing you, the one that was done before, you can see she keeps the highlight here on her face. The highlight's still here, shadow's still here, shadow's here, highlight down here, shadows on this side. All of that still stays in here because otherwise her face is just flat. It's a mask. And you don't want that part. Make sense? All right. So we've got a couple of problem areas that we need to deal with, and this is the first one right here. So we need to zoom in and we need to look at this. I refer to this as the cigarette burn, just because I don't know anything else to call it. I'm not really sure. So basically, I don't know what it really was. Again, this girl was incredibly famous. She was extremely successful. And I don't know if this was a temporary thing. I don't know what it was. And clearly the makeup artist is trying to cover it with makeup. This was shot on film. This is not a digital file. So at any rate, we need to deal with this thing. This is not something that you can actually deal with tonally because this is now much, much more of a texture as well as color issue, which should give you the clue to the tool that we actually need to fix this with. So what tool in our toolbox do we have that will actually replace texture and then blend in the surrounding color? Healing brush tool. So we're going to look at all the options of it. So I need all of you to do this with me because I need to know how it works on your screen and we'll see what you vote for. So to do this, you need to come back down to your retouching, pixel retouching layer because that's where we're going to do this. And we have options here. So the first option that we're going to do on this is the spot healing brush tool. So if you come back over again to your screen, click on the drop-down menu. We're going to come to the very one at the very top, the spot healing brush tool. Now, when most people use the spot healing brush tool, by default, it works with content aware. There are other tools that we can actually work for different purposes, none of which really apply to this guy right here. So we are going to leave it at content aware. You do have restricted blending modes here as well, but in this case, we don't want to restrict this. We want this to be normal because what I'm hoping it's going to do is, again, I'm hoping it's going to replace this texture in here with surrounding texture. Again, I don't get to pick the texture. Photoshop is going to pick it because it is the spot healing tool. I am going to make the tool a little bit larger, my brush a little bit larger, but I want to tell you this about the tool, and this is one of the tricks. So for both healing and spot healing, both of these, you need to select the entire area that's the problem in one fell swoop. And the reason you need to do it is this. If I only select the top half of this, what it's going to do is it's going to replace the texture in the top half, which I want, but then it's going to look at the surrounding texture, at the surrounding color, and try to match that in. And I still have got this really dark color down here that it's not skin tone. So I don't want this thing to actually match this darker skin tone down here at the bottom. So to avoid that, you want to select the entire thing, and you actually want to overlap it a little bit. You don't want to just get on that very edge. So you do it like this, and you guys can do it with me. It will make it paints like a black on your image, but you want to circle this entire thing and you don't want to let go. You want to make sure that you've got all of it, or at least as much as you think you can to get to the outside and then let go. And it does a relatively good job. I'm still seeing an edge right up here on the top where I can see part of that circle. So I don't think this is actually the best tool in the tool shed to do this, but nonetheless, it's what it is. So I want everybody to come over to the history palette and click on your little history, the little camera, and the thing that comes up, and I'm going to call this spot healing. And say OK to that, and then I'm going to hit Command Z to undo it. We're going to go after this a second way now, and the second way we're going to go after is the healing brush tool, where you get to actually pick where that happens. So with the healing brush tool actually selected, again, I'm going to make my brush a little bit larger. I want to check the quality of this brush and make sure that it is not completely hard. Yeah, it's got like a 50% hardness, so I'm fine with that. Again, I need to make sure that my blending mode was set to darken. This is actually from something that we were doing before. I need to go back to a normal blending mode. You'll notice that you don't have opacity options in this guy. And I'm going to pick where this comes from, and I'm going to try two different issues here. I'm going to try the texture that's actually down here below it in the front part right here, and then I'm also going to try the texture that's up in the back and just see if I think I like one better than the other. So I'm hovering down here. I'm going to hold down the Option key and click to set my source point down here, and I'm going to come up, and again, you do the same thing. You want to make sure that you select everything, let go, and you can see where it actually blends in a little bit right there. That doesn't look too bad to me. I'm going to snapshot this, and I'm going to call it Healing 1. And say OK. And then again, Command Z to go back in space. Then I'm going to actually sample from up here. Option click to set my sample point up here, and then again do the exact same thing again. I'm actually going to paste that to go ahead and do that. Snapshot this and call this Healing Brush 2. And then finally, Command Z to undo that. I'm going to do one last thing here, and it's the patch tool. It's the third of the ones down. And the patch tool we actually end up using a lot in different ways. How many people in this room, because I don't think we're going to get to it today, how many people in this room have done any split frequency work, split frequency retouching? Okay, we will get into that in a big way. I don't know if we're going to start it today. We might. It looks like we might actually have time to get to it. We'll see. But at any rate, this is a tool that ends up being used a lot in that type of work. So again, the way this tool works is you actually pick the problem area first. So again, you'll get a selection tool. It is the lasso tool. As a matter of fact, you can actually start this process with the lasso tool. So what you want to do is you want to draw around the entire problem area. And again, you want to give yourself a little bit of room in there. You don't want to actually try to trace this right on that edge. You will get an active selection going, and if you hover your mouse over the middle of this, you will see it looks like it's supposed to be a patch, and then with arrows that are shooting off into a different side. What it's telling you now is go find an area of texture that you want to use to replace this with. So if you click and you drag off to the side, so look at how much darker this is. Now the texture has been replaced, but I haven't let go yet. So the second half of how the healing tools work is the blending of color. That hasn't happened yet and won't until I let go. But watch what happens when I let go. This thing is actually going to get lighter. So I'm going to let go, and you can see it now blends in. Command D to deselect. And I'm going to snapshot that, and I'm going to call it Patch Tool. And then I'm going to scroll to the top of my history palette, and I'm going to click on Spot Healing. And then Healing 1. Healing 1 looks better to me. Healing 2. Healing 2 looks better to me still. Patch Tool. Hands down the best. But now it's an informed decision. You've just seen 5 options on this. Make sense? Only way to actually get that part. Now, I would say this. I am still seeing small discoloration down here. I can see it on my screen. Right in here. This area right down in here looks darker to me than it really should. So again, that is not, don't hit that again with a healing brush tool. You actually need to go after that with your tonal work. So this is a large tonal problem right here. So back to large tonal. Your foreground and background colors are still the same. I've got my foreground color is set to dodge. Hit the B key to get a brush. I'm going to leave it at that 3%. Make sure that it is a soft brush it is. And I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. And I'm going to come over to this area right here, and I'm going to lighten it up. So this is constantly what's going on. You can see that I actually lightened that whole part up. It's constantly a question of using all of these tools all together. Are there questions about this? Are we good? All right, there's one last challenge that we've got in here, and it's her hair. So if you double click on the hand, you can kick all the way back out. The work that we're doing now, you don't really need that second view. So if you want to get rid of the second view, you can. Again, for me, it's just an economy of screen real estate. So this is the problem that I've got right up here is her hair. I want to go ahead and fill this part in. And this is something that we did on Sunday as well. It's going to be the exact exact same trick. We're going to go after this the exact same way. So to do this, I am going to go to the paste board. So hit the F key to get to the paste board. Then actually drag this down a little bit. Hit the L to get the lasso tool. And then I'm going to select all of the hair. I'm selecting this entire part of her head. I'm selecting the whole thing because one of the worst things that can happen is that you'll end up selecting not quite all of it, and then isn't in the selection that you made, and you got to then you're just grabbing the hair all at once. I am going to then jump this to its own layer, but right now I'm on my large tonal imaging retouching layer, so I need to go back down to my pixel retouching, and I'm going to Command J. It jumps that to its own layer. So if you want to see what it looks like, simply hold down the Option key and click on the eyeball, and you can see it's just down there by itself. And again, the thing that we need to do is we need to avoid repeating patterns in this. So I need to change the hair. I'm going to transform it. So this is my hair patch right here. Command T brings up the transform dialog box. And the first thing I always do is I simply rotate things slightly. It just breaks up that idea of repeating pattern. But then I also typically will stretch things out. I make it a little bit larger. And then a lot of times too, I will compress things a little bit. Now in the case of this girl, you can see the catch lights in her eyes are telling you that this thing is actually, what's going on in here, this is actually a relatively flat, straight-on light to her. So the only shadowing that's happening on here is actually from forehead down to underneath her chin. There is no real shadowing in this hair per se. You can see, it looks like there's a little bit on this side over here. I'm not really certain that that's truly what's going on. It's conceivable that you could flip this thing horizontally, that you could actually flip it right to left and still get away with it. Now, I'm not going to do that, but if I got really panicked in this situation and things weren't working, I might actually try that, and if I can get away with it. If I don't spot any shadows in here, like in this area right in here, if I was using this, if I'm flipping it to the side, that actually changes the whole orientation of this lighter blonde, the darker streak, and the lighter blonde here. It would change that up. Again, all in the effort to try to avoid repeating the pattern. So, but at any rate, I'm going to leave this as it is right now, just as this transform right here. So I'm going to go ahead and click the checkbox to commit the transform. So that's now actually been transformed. Now I have no idea where this thing needs to go. You can drop the opacity of this layer to kick it down and zoom into this area to see. Again, I'm going to hit the V key now to do a move tool around to sort of see where this thing needs to go to kind of cover that area. It gets me close, but I don't know that this is really going to help me a whole lot. So we'll see how this goes. I'm going to drag the opacity back up to 100% again. And then the way I work with this, everybody's different, but the way I work with this is that I like to add the hair. I like to paint it in as opposed to remove it. So to do that, I'm going to hover over the Add Layer Mask icon here. I'm holding down the Option key to add a black layer mask. Now again, if you don't remember that Option key trick, simply add a regular layer mask to it, which is white, which is allowing this entire patch to show through, and then Command I to invert that layer mask. And now the mask is actually hiding what's going on. I'm going to hit the B key to get a brush. I'm going to check normal blending mode. I want 100% opacity, 100% flow, and in this case, I've got a problem. And this goes back to the same problem that we had when we're doing the skin retouching, and it's this. If I keep a completely hard edge to do this, you will spot that hard edge. You will see every single line where I'm actually added that new hair. It'll be incredibly obvious that that's what you've done, just like when we use the spot healing, really the hard, clone stamp tool on the girl's pimple on her chin. You could spot it. If we use a completely hard brush here, you will spot that line. You can't miss it. If I go to a completely soft brush, it's the same problem that I had with doing skin. I'm taking old texture and I'm blending new texture on top of it. And where I do a complete replacement, it's fine, but when I do where that soft edge exists, it's allowing old texture to show through, and it's obvious what's going on. So in my case, I'm going to try to thread the needle in the middle, and I'm going to do this at a 50% hardness and hope that I get away with it. So again, I'm going to leave that at 50%. I'm going to click to get out of this. I'm going to make my brush a little bit larger. Hit the X key to make sure that white is my foreground color. Now you'll notice something has happened here. Before I actually did this, these colors were my dodging and burning colors. They're not my dodging and burning colors any longer. I want you to, before we do any work on this, I want you to click on the image. And you'll see when you click on the image that it goes back. Your foreground and background colors are still your dodging and burning colors. But remember, I told you guys ages ago that you cannot have color in a mask, and you can't. And that mask is a mask. It's a channel. It's sitting right down here. It's this guy right here. You can't have color in it. So when you actually click on your mask to make it active, these things go back to only shades of gray. So I've got white and black that are actually in here, which is what I want. And then I'm going to come up here, and I'm actually going to simply click and paint down. And I'm going to click and paint down here. And I'm going to click and paint down here. And then you'll see there's problems that I've run into. And one of them is actually this. I can actually spot where the new hair is sitting right here. I can see that a million miles away. So this is clearly not a good fix for me to actually do this part. So one of the tricks to doing this kind of work is to continue, even though the hair up here does not need to be replaced, is to continue this patch all the way to the edge of your image to make it less obvious. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to drag this all the way out to the end. And now I've actually, you can see some of this is working, some of this is not working. If you hold down the Option key and click, you can actually see what this line looks like, and it may be a little too hard, but this is my line, and I'm going from edge to edge, which is what I want to do. However, the patch that's underneath it is not right. So again, I'm going to click on the eyeball here to turn everything else back on. I'm going to break the link between my image and my mask. The mask is in the correct place. If you want to see where it really is, hold down your the Command key and simply click, and it'll load it as a selection. You can see that the mask is actually in the right spot, but the image that's underneath it isn't the correct image. Does that make sense, everyone? All right, so Command D to deselect. With the link broken, you want to select your image, not the mask, but the image. You can now move the image. The mask will not move. The mask is actually going to stay there unless I select it and move it. But it's the image now. Hit the V key to actually move it, and you can adjust what you actually see, what's sort of like going on in here. And you can see in this case that I can actually kick back, and I'm getting a little part of it here. I've got a little problem right here with, I'm seeing part of her eyebrow coming through that, this is my new mask right here. But this has begun to do the work that I want to do, and I don't feel like I've got a repeating pattern in here. I'm getting still the same striations in her hair. That part's actually working for me. I haven't picked up this other guy yet. It's not a ton of it. I haven't fixed the entire part. But if you take a look at what's going on here, you can actually see I'm moving part of it. I'm sort of getting rid of part of it. I'm going to try to refine this now just a little bit better. So I'm going to go back to my mask. I'm going to hit the B key to get a brush, and then I'm going to hit the X key to get black, and I'm going to paint through this part right in here to bring the original part of that back into my image. I'm also going to come on this other side over here and see if it's actually got anything that I can pick up back over here again. And you can see I can pick up a little bit more on the hair that's actually over here. I'm actually able to pick up a little bit more, but I'm worried about this edge part right in here where these two are coming in. So you can see I can spot that fake right there. That is a million miles away. I can see that guy. So I'm going to hit the X key again, go to a smaller brush, and try to just get rid of that part that's actually making that look right, and that's worse. Command Z, and I'll go in the other direction, X key, and try to add to this and take this all the way back up through and see if I can't get that part to actually be a little bit more believable. This is so hard to do with a brush. So this feels a little bit more believable to me. Again, I've carried those additional strokes all the way up to the edge of this guy. So this is sort of what I've got going now. Again, it may not be 100% perfect, but I can't get a whole lot more than this, and it's actually, it's a pretty good road. Again, the fact that I've got this weird little thing that's happening in here, I don't actually feel like in a way that helps keep it a little bit more organic, but I can't get rid of the hair part. This is as far as I could actually take this. So our next step is, this is actually doing exactly what it needs to do. With this layer selected, hold down the Command key and hit the letter E. and it merges all of that work down into my pixel retouching layer. This is now a part of that pixel retouching layer, and you can see if you turn it on and off that that's what we've actually done here. Works pretty well. You do the same process all over again. So the lasso tool, the L key, surround the whole area of hair, collect everything. You don't want to, again, leave yourself short. Command J to jump that to its own level. In this case now, I'm going to hit Command T to transform it. I'm actually going to rotate it a little bit more to the side here. It's even a little bit more of a rotation. Again, I'm going to stretch things out a little bit, and I'm going to compress things a little bit. And I'm simply going to try to cover that area. And now I'm just guessing. This is usually I don't ever do the opacity tool thing. I don't ever use that part. It's too time consuming. So I'm just getting it roughly in the area that I want it to be, and I'm going to go ahead and click on the checkbox to say OK to that. Again, I need to add a black layer mask to this. So I'm holding down the Option key, and I'm going to click on, Add Layer Mask. It gets rid of that whole part. Again, now I'm going to hit the B key to go to a brush. And in this case, what I see happening is if I move into here like this, what I could imagine happening is this. I could believe that this one strand of hair that's going right along here is solid, and that the new hair that I add is actually coming from underneath this guy. So if I can get just this edge right here, I'll feel pretty good about that. So we'll see how this goes. Again, probably a smaller brush to do this with. Again, I've got to now reveal on this mask, so hit the X key to get white as my foreground color, and I'm going to come up into this area right here, and I'm going to start and click to move this down. And I'm simply going to paint in the hole that's in this girl's head right now, the hole that's in the hair. I think I'm going to have to change the with the hair that's underneath it. So again, I don't know what's underneath it, but I'm just actually going to come down here like that part, and feels like that's going. Again, I don't believe that this is looking like it's starting from underneath this girl's hair, so I've got to carry that all the way up to the top. I'm going to take it all the way out. You can see you can't just let it stop here. You got to go all the way with it. Then I'm going to hit the X key to try to clean that up just a little bit. And then finally, I'm going to zip back out a little bit here. I'm actually going to, again, break the chain link between the mask and the image. I want to look at my mask really quick first. And you can see I've got problems in here. Look at this. That will never work, is to have something in the middle of this. So you have got to get rid of this. You also can't have this in here as well. These are all going to be dead giveaways. So that part's actually looking better to me. Yeah. So then again, I'm going to turn this guy back on. I'm going to zip back out. I'm breaking the link between the mask and the image, so I've got the image is now selected. And again, hit the V key to get the move tool, and I can move this stuff around to see sort of like what's going on here, and do I get a better blend in here, and can I get a better fix in here? And I'm actually pushing this up. Now, this is opening up parts down here, so you can continue to transform this, fix that we've got going on down here. Command T to bring it up so that I can actually rotate it. So I can continue to rotate it and actually bring that a little bit more in line. That feels slightly better. I feel like I'm getting a repeating pattern in here though, so I'm going to rotate back a little bit. That feels a little better to me, and then I'm going to get rid of this stuff that's at the top, I think. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK to that. Go back to my mask, hit the B key, hit the X key to get to be black, and I'm going to try to take parts of that out to make that a little bit more believable. Yeah.
What were you saying about like on the mask where you can't have like an opening in the middle, or you have like two?
Oh, it was this. I'll show it to you really quick in a completely different spot. So hang on one second. Back to this. So take a look. Let's say that this was going to be my mask. I'll show it to you here really quickly. See this split that's in here?
Yeah.
So let's say that this was really my mask. Hang on, let me just finish this part right here. Let's say that this was really what my mask was doing, right? That's what it looked like. This middle is a dead giveaway. So you just, if you go to the mask and you can just look at it, you spot those things and you can say, oh yeah, the hair looked great, but no, clearly there's a spot here where I'm letting the old thing is actually coming through. And so it's just a way to look at that. I also would look again, this is where you can see, is your mask going from edge to edge? Are you getting through? I can look at this right here and I can see that there's a like a stair step right here. There's another weird little edge thing that's happening right here. By looking at my mask, this just shows me places that I should be looking at the hair patch to see how that's working. So let me get rid of the thing that I just put out. So again, I'll go back to that right there, and it's right in here. That's where that stair step is. You can see that little bump right there is actually this guy right here. So I can actually tip that off right here on the mask, not even looking at the image. But again, I know that that's actually a better fix. So this is actually now my new hair fix part right here. I feel like I've got repeating pattern that's actually happening right here. This looks like this, that looks like this. So I want to get rid of at least one of those guys, but at this stage of the game, I'm not going to be greedy. Again, I'm going to merge this down. Command E merges all of that down. Back to the lasso tool again. Select all of the hair again. Command J to jump that to its own layer. I'm actually going to, again, Command T to transform it. I'm going to rotate it slightly, and I'm going to bring something out. I'm going to see if, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get away with this, but let me see if I can find something else in here. We'll try. Again, go ahead and commit that transform. Hold down the Option key. Put on a black layer mask. It's this problem, it's this guy right here. So again, the B key to get a brush, a little bit bigger, a little too big. X key to make white my foreground color. And I'm gonna try to fix that part right there. Again, I've got to worry about this part right here. You can see that whole little round part of my brush is right there. That'll never work. This is where pen pressure can come in and be your best friend, because with pen pressure what you can do is you can actually set your pen on your tablet to, as you reduce the pressure, your brush actually starts to get smaller. It will actually taper back, and that's what I really need to actually have happen here. I need this to actually taper back, but I don't have a tablet here, so we'll see. I'm going to unbreak the link between the two, hit the V key to actually move it, and see if I can't get something in here. I'm actually moving my mask, not my image. So undo that, make sure that you're selecting the image and move it. And I feel like I might be able to get this to marry into this part right here. Again, Command T to bring that up, zip back out. I've got to take some of the bend out of that guy. Sorry. That's not working well for me. Yeah, well, you get where this is going. I'm not going to spend hours on this, but does this make sense to you guys? And it's just continuing to work on that. One of the things that you should realize in all of this, we'll get to this a little bit later in some of our retouching as well, is that one of the best sources that you can ever get to for doing hair fixes like this, if you're shooting digital, or even if you're shooting film, is if I had another image of this very same girl that was shot in this very same light, there was just another frame of this, the frame after this, or the frame after that, her hair may have moved frame after that, and I can steal the hair from that image and bring it into this guy to actually fix that hole. Or there even may be a frame in here where the hole never existed, where I've got just the whole solid hair. I can copy that and bring it into this guy and work with that part as well. Does that sort of make sense? Okay, are there questions about any of this? Because this is what your homework is. I'm going to look at the due date on this part really fast. Because again, I realize that this is a little bit more time intensive. I'll set a different due date for the chroma key thing after we get through Wednesday. Let's see how Wednesday goes, and then we will figure out. Because again, I'm going to try to get us in the studio at least Wednesday afternoon. But this is actually 7/1. If you click on 7/1, it says it's due July 24th, which is 2 days from now. I'm going to push that back, and we'll make it Friday. Is that okay? How are you guys feeling about the material you need to bring for our conversation on Wednesday? Have we got stuff we can talk about? Sure. So are there any other questions about this retouching part first? Because then I'm going to kill this recording. Katie.
So like in the real world, how would you know like what, like as far, I guess it's like to me at this point a little bit more obvious about the skin, but like with the hair going in the hole, how would you know like that is something that needs to be retouched?
Oh, again, that's the conversation that you have, and we should actually talk about that really briefly, really quick, because I can do that right now. Other questions about the image itself, though?
Do you worry about the kind of consultation with the makeup artist when you're doing these retouches with the makeup?
I don't worry about the makeup artist at all. I worry about the client. That's the only person I worry about. Now, the truth of it is, if you really get serious about this, and this actually happens when there's a really famous retoucher in New York. His name is, everybody just calls him Pascal. He, and his, I don't know that you can find anymore because he's sort of gotten out of retouching, and he does a lot of film now. But if you do a Google search for box retouching in New York, you'll go to his website. Pascal was probably the single most famous retoucher in the 90s and the aughts for all fashion photography. Steven Meisel did not shoot without Pascal sitting on his set, because what Pascal could do is he would say to them, you know, if you add this little edge light right here, that'll give me enough separation that I can do this. Because they were always communicating together to try to generate the imagery that they needed to generate for ultimately the retouching that was going to be needed. So especially the Prada stuff where they were doing all those multiple figures and they were putting all of that stuff together, they were actually shooting that none of that was actually shot to be final. It was all shot to be parts of something that got put together. And the retouchers were sitting right there with them saying, you should do this, you should do that. I'm going to show you guys, because we have time to do it today, I'm going to show you guys Nick Knight. How many people in this room know of Nick Knight? Okay, the rest of you guys need to know Nick Knight. It's hard to say who's the most famous, successful fashion photographer in the world right now. He's certainly up there. He would be one of the top 5. There's no question about that. He has got, and you can actually watch this. If you go to Show Studio, it's actually one of his many projects. But Show Studio is Nick Knight's. It's his baby. You'll see a lot of things on Show Studio. There's a lot of films on Show Studio. There's a lot of other stuff on there. But every now and then, they actually just set up a camera during Nick Knight's shootings. And it's a camera, it doesn't move. It's a camera that just sits there and it shows the set. And it goes on for 8 or 10 hours. I mean, it does the whole shooting, and you see how he works. And there is a digital tech retoucher sitting at his station, and the entire time there's this conversation going back and forth between them. And it's all about making the image that it's never the final image. It's always about generating the content that will allow them to do what they need to do in post to create the final image. Does that sort of make sense? So I can't really say other than that would be the ideal role that you would be in as far as that part goes. You would be there as the consult for that, and then you would be the person who actually did the post as well. But a lot of you guys, hopefully this is going to be the work that you can do for yourself as well, or to start thinking about things in those terms. Make sense? Okay. So with that said, don't let me forget about well, I'm going to take a look at the retouch part right here. I think I've given this to you guys. So if you take a look at our module for resources in week number 7, right here, under the support part, there is a retouch work order form here. If you click to open this thing up, this is the conversation that you would have as a retoucher, and it is a contract that you would have as a retoucher. So this is one form of it. You're welcome to use this. It's one that has been around forever, whatever. but it spells everything out. It talks about, again, the description of the work order, who all the contact people are, all the cell numbers, when stuff is supposed to be expected, how fast it's supposed to be turned around. It actually describes what you are being given here. All of this matters, whether you're being giving chromes, negatives, prints, removable media, any of those kind of things here. There's a copyright clause here because, again, this can actually get to be really tricky. If a client gives you a photographer's image and they don't own it, then there is a copyright infringement inherent in that. How many of you guys in here are really familiar with copyright law? Oh my. Well, somebody shoot me an email because that's definitely got to go on the list. This is your protection, and this is important. But at any rate, it deals with all of that issue right here. And then if you look at the second page of all of this, again, it goes through exactly what is going to be spelled out, what has been decided to actually do. And the reason that this becomes important is that you need the client to be signing off on this, that not only that they have requested this and then spelled out, I need you to fix the global exposure on this, and you actually need to do general cleanup and dust and mold and scratches on this, and the client agreed to all of that. So in the end, you want a document that spells out exactly what was requested from you and nothing else. So then when you go back and the client says, well, I thought you were going to fix her nose, and I thought you were going to actually take 5 pounds off of her, and I thought you were going to do that, and you say, well, it wasn't on the contract. We never talked about that. I'll be happy to do it, but it's going to cost you more. Because they'll try to get away with everything. They'll say, okay, yeah, an hour's worth of retouching will be fine, blah, 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 blah. Just, yeah, do a little cleanup and fix the exposure, yeah. And then you come back and they're like, well, no, you didn't fix the skin, and look at the hair, and I thought we were going to change the color of the dress, and look at her feet are too big, and and you're just like, we didn't have any of that conversation here. Remember this form that we all filled out? This thing still goes on, because there's other much, much more specific stuff that you can get into. What are you going to do for the face? What are you doing for the eyes? What are you doing for bodies? What are you doing for clothing? What are you doing for the environment? If you are not a people shooter, if you're somebody who's shooting food, you can easily adapt this language. Just go in there, take this form, where it says, clothing, replace clothing with, with tablecloth or whatever. But you need this. And if you have this, then you're protected. Then you'll say, this is what we agreed to do, this is what I've done, give me my money. Other questions about this part? Are we good on this? Okay. I'm going to stop this recording now. I am going to go to Marge's question really quick. What do I expect on Wednesday? What do I expect on Wednesday is anything that you can do to further the conversation about what you plan on doing for your semester-long project. Now, the way this class was originally designed was, it was all supposed to be about exit portfolio, which I think keeps things